Welcome back to the Pylon to Pylon podcast, episode 4, part 2. Thank you guys for bearing with us right now. We had some technical difficulties that made us split this episode up into two, but we got some great stuff going forward for you. Before we get into, as we promised, College Game Day predictions, there was some news that has broken since our part 1 edition. Some more realignment stuff. We saw Oregon and Washington officially going to the Big Ten, as well as some other rumors spreading around with who's going to be going to the ACC, who the Big 12 might be picking up. Some really interesting things, some very worrying things sometimes, and some perspectives with conference realignment. What do you have to think about it?
Yeah, with everything going on, we've seen multiple schools leaving the Pac-12. Pac-12 looks like it's bound to just collapse at this point. Only four teams are left, being Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, Stanford. Um, it already has came out that Cal and Cal and Stanford are looking at moving to the ACC, which is surprising, being the Atlantic Coast Conference. Just doesn't make sense because they're on the Pacific Coast. So we talked about earlier the joke the ACC is going to be the All Coast Conference now instead of Atlantic Coast. But yeah, another school they're looking to pick up is SMU. Currently, they play in the AAC, but they just lost three of their biggest members, so their fourth is probably going to be on that same path soon.
Yeah, and we're also seeing rumors for Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State to the Big 12. Could see that solidify in coming days. It's going to be interesting to see the ramifications after all this ends up, or all the dust getting settled, really. I'm going to see some athletes traveling pretty far and putting in a lot more hours than they used to for sports, which really affects a lot more of the non revenue generating sports like swimming, track and field, um, baseball, maybe to a certain extent, depending on where you're talking about. Um, so it's going to be interesting to see what the changes come from this change.
Yeah, the travel from kind of the West Coast to East Coast is something to think about for these athletes and coaches. They're going to be traveling a lot, and they're going to be having to balance a lot with that as well. Especially seeing these California schools that are joining these more Eastern based conferences. Like that flight from USC to Rutgers is not going to be fun to make. That flight from Cal to the University of Miami, Florida, that's across the country, especially going from like Cal to even Boston College, which is up in the Northeast. So we're going to be seeing kind of how this affects the players, if it even affects them. Might get them ready for more. But yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna you're gonna see a lot of changes, I think, happen, or at least some ramifications. As we said, travel is gonna put a lot of stress and pressure on student athletes. It's going to be interesting to see what recruiting happens moving forward. I think a lot of the areas that we previously saw get dominated by certain schools, or certain schools kind of sticking to certain areas, is going to change now. Um, and I mean, recruiting is already starting to change with transfer portal and with playoff expansion. So a lot of changes happening. But I think most of them are really for the best. And as we're going to see in the coming years, college football already a top sport, really. You can kind of count it really as like the fifth biggest sport in North America, putting it up with the NFL, MLB, NHL, um, which
NBA.
one? NBA. So could be gaining more momentum even on top of that.
Yeah, can be interesting to see how this affects the game. If it maybe helps with the new changes that we've seen in the past couple of years, with you know, as we talked about in part one, NIL being brought into the game, and yeah, seeing how this could play an effect on that. Also, with the college football playoff expansion, maybe this will benefit that. Maybe it won't. So we'll have to see how this plays out. Um, I doubt that these are going to be permanent. I feel like things are always changing in college sports. Like, for example, we need to get Gonzaga to the Big East. All right. Kevin and I, both members of Big East school, go Demons, but we'd love to get Gonzaga in the Big East. So
Yeah,
I'm just
that'd
putting
be
that out there.
a great addition. We need to get Dwayne Peavy watching this podcast. We need to get the commissioner of the Big East watching the podcast.
Yep. That would be
Start
nice.
convincing him now. Gonzaga to Big East.
Yeah. But, that's all we got for the new expansion updates. Unless, well, we can touch on Washington and Oregon are going to the Big Ten. Two big moves for two well deserving programs. Oregon's got Nike in their back pocket. Washington's been a very competitive team in recent years. It feels like putting a lot of NFL talent in to the league, and it's a big time move for them to join USC and UCLA and go into the Big Ten next year.
Yeah, the Big Ten's going to become a dogfight. There's a lot of really good teams already in the Big Ten. A lot of really good teams heading to the Big Ten. I know they've been somewhat secondary to the SEC in recent years, but if all these teams kind of stay up where they are or even move up in their rankings, you could, I think, see the Big Ten overtake the SEC or at least start to compete with them a lot more um, from that competitive level and that NFL level that the SEC loves to talk about. Um, but moving on now to, as we promised, game day predictions, college game day. Everybody loves to watch it. Gotta love Lee Corso and those headdresses. Kirk Herbstreit, always always a good time to watch. Week
Excited.
one has already been announced. It's University of South Carolina versus University of North Carolina. A game very early on that's going to have a lot of implications later, and game that really is probably going to become more and more of a rivalry as we move forward with two teams on the up and up right now.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler versus Drake May, week one. Not a lot, much more you can ask for. This game's gonna be played in Charlotte, where the Carolina Panthers play. So that'll be kind of a little fun spot for them to have or to host College Game Day. Both these teams are looking to make a statement after good years that felt like they could have been even better. They got seems like this is kind of the make or break year for both these teams as well. So a big week one match for both of them. Both of them looking to prove something. Incredible choice by College Game Day.
Yeah.
Week two, Texas is going to Alabama. I feel like this one's a no brainer. The two just blue blood college football fan bases. Kevin, you got Joe. So.
Yeah. Bryant Denny Stadium is going to be packed for this one with a rowdy crowd. As you said, there's no really other option for week two, even though week two is a solid week across the board for games. But Texas wants their revenge. I feel like Texas thinks they really should have won that game last year. Bama doesn't have Bryce Young anymore to ride on. I think they really rode his shoulders last year to beat Texas. Um, Two teams that are looking to make a statement in week two early on, and I don't think College Game Day really will go anywhere else. They're going to be really enticed to go here week two, but it'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out with them going to Bama so early on.
Yeah,
But
The
Oh, go ahead.
Quinn Ewers gonna get his revenge against Alabama. Hopefully, hold on.
Hopefully.
Sorry. Um, we just got stripped from seeing him play them last year. He got hurt in the first half, and that's just something you never want to see. So
Yeah.
it was fun to kind of see these two teams looking to get back this year. And yeah, great week 2 matchup that college football fans everywhere are looking forward to. Moving on to week 3 now. We got Pitt, West Virginia. A backyard brawl is the name of this rivalry. Last year, this game between JT Daniels and Keaton Slovis was fantastic. One of the best games of the year. Highly recommend watching the highlights from it. Absolute mayhem all the way throughout. And this would be kind of a fun one for College Game Day to go explore, in Morgantown. Big game.
Yeah. As you said, it's a hell of a rewatch from last year. I think this year's game is going to be very similar. Two teams that are kind of on par with each other. Morgantown is a great college town, and Game Day loves a good college town. Um, so I can't really see them going anywhere else for week 3. But it is worthy to mention that South Carolina is going to be at Georgia. And if South Carolina can come off to a really hot start, this could be a under the radar game that can end up being a pretty big upset.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to week 4, Clemson, Florida State is one of our picks we got here. Kind of a tough call between this one and Ohio State at Notre Dame. I feel like if Florida State wins Florida State wins week 1 versus LSU, and both these teams are 3-0 coming into this week, it definitely makes a good case. But if Florida State loses that week 1, then I think they're going to go Ohio State, Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'd say I'm in the same boat. I think if they're both 3-0 going into this game, then it has a lot more implications than if they're not. Um, OSU Notre Dame, obviously there's the tradition there. College Game Day loves tradition. South Bend is just full of it. The stadium is just full of it. Um, the game last year, Ohio State Notre Dame, was a really good game. There's a lot of not necessarily trash talk going on, but it's starting to get pretty hyped for an early game. Um, but as you said, Clemson FSU, it's kind of a toss up, I feel like, for this one, especially since Notre Dame, as you guys will hear later on for one of the weeks down the line, we could see them going there for a different Notre Dame game. So it'll be interesting to see what they end up deciding to do with week 4.
Yeah. Moving on to week 5, our pick is USC at Colorado. Colorado has a tough schedule kind of coming into this game. 2 of their first 4 weeks are going to be against. They got at TCU week 1, and then week 2 they got Nebraska at home, which are 2 games that are against kind of 2 competitive, 2 losable games, I'd say. And I feel like they can split those. Maybe take one of those, maybe lose one, win both. Who knows? It sets up perfectly for College Game Day to be going to Colorado week 5 against last year's Heisman winner, the best player in college football, Caleb Williams.
Yeah, Game Day is going to have to see Caleb Williams at some point. That's a given. And I feel like it's kind of also given that they're going to have to see Colorado at some point with Prime taking over for his first season. I could definitely see them at least winning one of those 2 tough games early on, if not being 4-0 going to week 5, which that would really create a hell of a game for Coach Prime versus Lincoln Riley in what's going to be a Pac-12 matchup that we're not going to really see going forward, but I think College Game Day will be really enticed to go see it.
Moving on
Moving
to
on.
week. moving on to week 6, we got Oklahoma, Texas in the Red River rivalry. I think this is going to be the last edition in the Big 12 conference between these two teams for now. Um, Oklahoma is looking to bounce back after a very rough season, and Texas is looking to cement themselves back into where they should be at the top of college football. And
Yeah,
this should be good.
the last Big 12 matchup between these two, as you said, even though they're going to keep playing each other in the SEC. But this is, I feel like, just kind of a shoe in, being the Red River rivalry. For week 6, I can't really see College Game Day going anywhere else unless Oklahoma and Texas have absolutely disastrous beginning to the season. Um, but even in that case, I could still see them going to this game because the intensity and the environment of the game is insane. And with it being the last one in the Big 12, I think they're going to be really enticed to go see Oklahoma and Texas play at AT&T Stadium, right?
Yeah, they're going to be playing in Dallas at the Cowboy Stadium, which should just make it all the more interesting.
Yeah. Moving on to week 7. This is where we got that second Notre Dame game, which makes things kind of interesting. We got USC versus Notre Dame as our pick for College Game Day for week 7. As I said before, Notre Dame's got the tradition that they're going to be really enticed to go see. But we'll see what ends up happening with week 4. So it's going to be kind of a toss up here. But if both teams are good going into week 7 and in good positions, this is a rivalry game with a lot of tradition and a lot of implications, which is 3 big things that College Game Day looks for.
Yeah. Last year, these two teams played in a game where Caleb Williams seemed dominant. Notre Dame had no answer for him. So it's going to be exciting to see what he does this year, playing in Notre Dame Stadium against the crowd as well. I feel like they're going to make it very tough on him, and I think that this could be a revenge game for Notre Dame after last year. And again, Caleb Williams, USC, like he's a highlight reel. So
A walking highlight reel.
absolutely. Moving on to week 8, pick is Penn State, Ohio State. This game could mean a lot towards who's making it to the Big Ten championship. Penn State's looking very dominant, not dominant, but they're looking very much improved compared to last season. I can't even say that. No, Penn State's a good football team. Period.
I
Penn
mean, I
State,
think it's
yeah,
it's kind of a nod to them to say that they're much improved compared to last season because they had a really good season last season.
yeah,
That's not to say that they were bad, but I think this is a team that gave Ohio State a little bit of a problem last year, even though Ohio State was able to come back, play some dominant defense, and end up winning that game. But this is an even better Penn State team than they saw last year. It's at Ohio State, which throws a little bit of a wrinkle in it for Penn State. But I think it's going to be another close one. College Game Day loves going to Ohio State. Columbus is a fun place to be. Um, and with the implications not only for the Big Ten championship, but for the playoffs as well, it's another one that it just really hits every single cylinder that College Game Day is looking for.
yeah. Week 9, I'd pick Georgia, Florida. This game is going to be played at the Jaguars Stadium in Jacksonville, which is again going to add to the fun. Yeah, it's going to add to the fun.
Yeah, I think it would be cool to see Georgia, Florida in the swamp. Um, but the rivalry there is always fun to watch, even though I think Georgia will probably dominate this game. Um, Florida might put up more of a fight than people think. and the crowd will definitely be insane. So the environment's there. That's what College Game Day really ultimately looks for, is the environment. Um, and I can't really see them going anywhere else week 9.
It'll be interesting to see how Graham Mertz fares against the mighty Georgia defense.
Yeah, good luck to him. He's going to need it.
Moving on to week 10, LSU, Alabama. This game is kind of going to be a determiner on if on who's going to be winning the SEC West. I feel like that's kind of just understood at this point. Um, both these teams looking to overtake Georgia.
Yeah, I don't see anyone else coming out of the SEC West besides one of these two teams. So this really could end up being the game that decides who's going to go to the SEC championship and play Georgia. I'm pretty sure Georgia's pretty much just a shoe in for the SEC East at this point. I really, with the schedule they have, it's obvious that they're going to the championship.
Well, wait a minute.
But on top of that, coming off of a really good game last year where LSU had to go for 2 right at the end of the game to end up beating Bama. So Bama's going to want revenge. LSU is going to want a even better win this year. It's going to prove to be a really good game. Moving on now to week 11, we've got what's been deemed now the Bussin' Bowl. Michigan, or sorry, this isn't the Bussin' Bowl. I'm thinking Michigan, Nebraska. Week 11, we got Michigan, Penn State. At Penn State, it's going to be really interesting. It's a very hard place to play. I know Michigan kind of dominated this game last year at Michigan, but as we said before, Penn State is improved on what was already a good team. And Michigan, really honestly, could be improved on what was already a very good team. So Penn State could make a statement here. Michigan could also make a statement, and it's right before the Big Ten championship. And with the Big Ten East being wide open between these two and Ohio State, there's a lot of implications.
Yeah, absolutely. This game's going to mean a lot, especially if Penn State can't pull it out versus Ohio State. They're going to definitely need to win this Week 11 matchup versus Michigan. And going up against this looks like the best roster Michigan's had. They're loaded up everywhere. And they're going to be tough to take down, but in Penn State, it's always going to be trouble.
My apologies if you can hear my dog barking. He doesn't like people, so you probably see some people outside. But moving forward, week 12, we've got UNC versus Clemson. We've talked a lot about implications so far. And that seems to be a big factor for College Game Day, and this one could have a lot of implications for the ACC championship. I think this one really could be the decider for who ends up playing what will most likely be Florida State in the ACC championship. I think people are probably expecting Clemson to come out in this one, but I wouldn't count Drake May out.
Oh, never. Never count him out. A good game that has the ACC Conference Championship written all over it. The winner of this game has a trip booked. We'll say in the next 2 weeks. I feel like the other game that I think competes with this one is definitely Georgia at Tennessee. Now, it's going to be interesting to see where Tennessee's at in this point of the season. But if they're in a similar spot they were last year, then this game could mean a lot for the SEC West.
Yeah,
Or
coming off of
SEC East.
coming off of game last year where I think Tennessee didn't really play up to expectations, but it was in Georgia, so it was a hard place to play. And being in Tennessee now with a Georgia team that has some questions, if Tennessee can play above expectations up to this point in the season, it could end up being a much better game than we're expecting right now. But it's a game that, for right now, is kind of a toss up.
Yep. Moving on to week 13, final week for most teams, not Army Navy. They got their own little special game, but rivalry week. Bama Auburn, Ohio State Michigan. Truly your pick, whatever your preference is. The two best rivalry games in college football. Ohio State Michigan arguably might be the best rivalry game in sports. So yeah, why wouldn't College Game Day want to go there? But we'll see what they choose to do.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those two. Um, it's rivalry week, so it's kind of hard to talk about teams that are going to be obvious winners, because I feel like in college football, especially, rivalries are the great equalizer. So even though Auburn may not be up to Bama's level, and we might expect Bama to kind of blow them out in that game, I would not be surprised to see that be a much closer game than people expect. But I think I lean a little bit more towards Ohio State, Michigan, um, for this game, because as we saw, the hype around last year's game was insane. And to say that it could even be bigger this year is nuts, because if they're both undefeated going into this last game at Michigan, with the recent history of Ohio State dominating and then Michigan dominating the last 2 years, I could see it even being bigger than last year's game.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast. Sorry if it was kind of inconvenient. It's our third time recording it. We've had some technical difficulties, but we're pulling through, and yeah, it should be up soon. So I want to thank you all for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Twitter at Pylon to Pylon Pod. Kevin, anything you want to add?
No, ditto to what everything Brett just said. Like, comment, subscribe. Give us any ideas you guys have, any comments, concerns, all that stuff. We love feedback. And thank you guys for bearing with us with the technical difficulties. We're getting used to a new platform here. So hopefully we'll smooth it out a little bit more, but we appreciate you guys drudging along with us.
Have a good day, night, weekend, evening, whatever. Peace.